Julian Thorne's life was a masterpiece of precision and control. From the bespoke suits tailored to his exact measurements, to the minute-by-minute schedule dictated by his personal assistant. Every detail was orchestrated to eliminate the unexpected. He was the founder and CEO of Thorne Industries, a global technology conglomerate. His world was one of high-stakes finance, sterile boardrooms, and private jets. He was a man who had everything, yet often felt he had nothing. His personal life was a quiet, empty affair, a casualty of his single-minded ambition. He had no family to speak of, a distant cousin or two, but no wife, no children. He had always told himself he preferred it that way, simpler, cleaner, without the messy emotions that he found so difficult to navigate. One rain-slicked Tuesday evening, the meticulous choreography of his life was interrupted. A sudden, violent shudder tore through his custom-built sedan as the engine sputtered and died on a deserted stretch of road. His driver, a man named George, whose unflappable demeanor Julian had always appreciated, pulled the car to the shoulder and grimly announced, "Sir, it appears to be a total engine failure. I've called for a tow, but it's going to be a while." Julian, a man who rarely waited for anything, was stranded. A quick glance at his phone showed no signal. He stepped out of the car, the cold drizzle a shock to his system. He looked around. The only sign of civilization was a garish neon sign blinking through the gloom. It read, in faded pink letters, "Rose's Diner." With a sigh of resignation, Julian began to walk. The diner was a relic from another era, a place of chipped formica tables and vinyl booths. It was the antithesis of everything in his world. He slid into a booth, the springs groaning in protest, and ordered a black coffee from a tired-looking waitress with kind eyes and a worn uniform. As he nursed his coffee, Julian Thorne felt a sense of displacement. He was a foreign object in this small, warm space, a monument to corporate power in a kingdom of comfort food and cheap coffee. He was about to pull out his laptop and try to work when the sound of a door opening drew his attention. 3 girls, all no older than 10, came barreling into the diner, their laughter a riotous, joyful sound that cut through the quiet, soaked to the bone, their raincoats dripping onto the linoleum floor. The waitress from before, a woman named Maria, as his receipt had told him, came out from behind the counter, her face breaking into a warm, tired smile. "All right, you 3 little hooligans," she said, her voice a gentle, loving scold. Inside voices, "You'll scare away my one and only customer." Julian watched as Maria knelt down, helping one of the girls with a tangled zipper. That's when he saw it. A jolt, a physical shock, ran through him, causing him to spill a little of his coffee. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, sure he was seeing things. But no, there they were. 3 pairs of eyes, all the same shade of deep, piercing blue that he saw in the mirror every morning. The girls were identical, a trio of miniature carbon copies. But it wasn't just the eyes. It was the shape of their jawlines, the slight curve of their eyebrows. The way one of them, the one who looked like the leader, had a small faint scar just above her left eye, mirroring his own from a childhood accident. Julian Thorne, a man who prided himself on his icy composure, was stunned. His heart, a thing he had always considered a mere pump, began to race, a frantic, panicked drum against his ribs. He watched as the girls, chattering excitedly, were led to a booth by a back window. He couldn't tear his eyes away. It was like looking at a fractured reflection, a ghostly echo of himself, not once, but 3 times over. Who were they? And why did they look exactly like him? He sat there for what felt like an eternity, his mind a maelstrom of confusion and disbelief. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, his brain so accustomed to analyzing data and calculating risks, now in a state of complete paralysis. The waitress, Maria, returned to the counter and noticed the look on his face. "Everything all right, mister? You look like you've seen a ghost." The words, so innocently spoken, felt like a punch to the gut. I'm fine," he stammered, his voice sounding foreign even to his own ears. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "I was just ... admiring your daughters. They're very beautiful." A soft, genuine smile graced Maria's face, a smile that seemed to light up the whole diner. "Oh, thank you. They're a handful, but they're my whole world." "That's Lily, the oldest, by a whole 2 minutes. Then Lena, and the little one is Layla." She gestured to the booth, her gaze lingering on them with a love so palpable it was almost a physical thing. Julian felt a lump form in his throat. He looked at the girls again. Lily, the leader, was drawing something furiously on a napkin. Lena was trying to help, and Layla, the youngest, was watching them, her blue eyes wide with adoration. His blue eyes, the similarity was undeniable, an inescapable, terrifying truth. He had to know. He had to ask. He had to know the impossible answer to the unspoken question. He stood up, his legs feeling like lead, and walked over to the counter. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and serious. "I need to ask you something. It's a bit ... personal." Maria looked at him, her smile fading, a flicker of guardedness entering her eyes. "Look, mister, it's been a long day." "Please," Julian cut her off, his voice laced with a genuine desperation that surprised even him. "I just ... I think I might know you from somewhere. About 10 years ago, maybe in the city, in a hotel bar." Maria's face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands, which had been wiping down the counter, stilled. The noise of the rain outside seemed to amplify in the sudden, heavy silence. "I don't think so," she said, her voice a low, hard whisper. "I don't know who you are." "The Hyatt," Julian pressed, a strange kind of certainty settling over him. "There was a conference. I was celebrating a deal. I had had too much to drink. You were a hostess. We ... We talked for hours. It was the only conversation I've ever had that I didn't feel was about business or money. You told me you wanted to be an artist. You told me about your love for painting and how you couldn't afford to do it as a career." Maria stared at him, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and a deep, buried pain. The memory, a memory she had locked away in the deepest recesses of her heart, came flooding back. A night of pure, unadulterated spontaneity. A brief escape from the crushing weight of her life. A beautiful stranger with a kind smile and blue eyes. I remember," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We ... We went back to my room," Julian continued, his voice a strained whisper now. "We said it would be just for the night. A beautiful, perfect secret. You left before I woke up. I never saw you again, I thought. I thought it was just a memory. I never thought..." He trailed off, his gaze drifting back to the 3 girls in the booth, their little faces alight with laughter. The truth, a monumental, life-altering truth, hung in the air between them, unspoken but brutally clear. The girls were his. His one night of true freedom had resulted in a lifetime of responsibility he had never known existed. Maria shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't want anything from you," she said, her voice breaking. "I tried to find you, but I couldn't. I didn't even know your last name. I just had your first name. You were just a memory. A good memory. When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared, but I knew I couldn't give them up. I just ... I had to do it on my own." Julian reached out, his hand trembling, and gently touched her arm. "3 of them?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Triplets," she said, a sad half-laugh escaping her lips. "I guess you don't do anything by halves, do you?" Julian Thorne, the man who controlled boardrooms and dominated markets, felt his entire world shift on its axis. He looked at the 3 girls who were an undeniable part of him, a part he had never known existed. He saw the love in Maria's eyes, the exhaustion in her face, the quiet strength that had carried her through a decade of being a single mother. He saw a life that was rich and messy and full of love, a life that was everything his was not. He sat back down in his booth, his hands shaking. He felt a fierce, primal surge of protectiveness, of love, for the 3 girls he had only just met. He had to make this right. He had to be a part of their lives. He had to be a father. He spent the rest of the evening sitting in the booth, watching them, absorbing the reality of it all. He learned their names, their personalities, their little quirks. He learned that Lily loved to draw, Lena was a whirlwind of energy, and Layla, the quietest of the 3, was a keen observer. He learned about the sacrifices Maria had made, the long hours she worked, the dreams she had put on hold, and he felt a deep, profound sense of shame, of regret, for the life he had been living. A life that, for all its opulence, was empty. Over the next few weeks, Julian's life was completely upended. He began showing up at Rose's diner every evening. At first, Maria was wary, but his genuine interest and quiet persistence soon wore down her defenses. He didn't come in a tailored suit, but in jeans and a simple sweater. He would sit in his booth, and when she was on a break, he would talk to her. He learned about the girls' school, their friends, their dreams. He learned about the challenges of raising 3 children on a waitress's salary. He started small. He paid for a new art set for Lily, a new set of sports equipment for Lena, and a new bookshelf for Layla. He would sit with them at their booth, a quiet, unfamiliar presence, and listen to them talk. He learned that they were not just 3 girls, but 3 distinct individuals, each with their own unique personality. The day he finally told them, he was terrified. He sat them down in their booth, Maria holding his hand under the table, a silent show of support. He explained who he was, and how he and their mother had known each other a long time ago. He told them, in simple, heartfelt terms, that he was their father. Lily, the leader, looked at him, her blue eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "So, you're a millionaire?" she asked, her voice small. Julian nodded, a wry smile on his face. "I am. And you own a whole company?" Lena asked, her eyes full of wonder. "I do. So, you're not going to take us away from Mommy?" Layla asked, her voice a timid whisper, her small hand clutching Maria's. The question hit him like a physical blow. The thought had never even crossed his mind. He looked at Maria, at her face, which was pale with fear. "Never," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Your mother is your mother. I just want to be a part of your lives. If you'll let me." The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Julian bought a larger, more comfortable house for Maria and the girls. A place with a huge backyard and a sunroom for Maria's paintings. Paid for private school for the girls, but Maria insisted they stay in their old public school, a place where they had their friends and their life. He didn't argue. He was learning. He was learning that money couldn't buy happiness, or a family, or a life. It could only provide a foundation. He began to change his schedule, a radical shift that sent shockwaves through Thorne Industries. He started leaving the office at 5 o'clock, an unheard of act, and would go to the girls' school plays and soccer games. He hired a new crew to take over the day-to-day operations of his company, a move he had been resisting for years. He was no longer just the CEO of Thorne Industries. He was a father, a man with a new and infinitely more important purpose. He and Maria began to talk more, their conversations no longer just about the girls, but about their own lives. He learned about her struggles, her heartaches, her triumphs. She learned about his loneliness, his regrets, his quiet despair. Their relationship, which had begun with a one-night stand and a decade of silence, was slowly, painstakingly, transforming into something more. One evening, as he sat in the new house, watching the girls play in the backyard, he felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The sound of their laughter, the sight of their faces, his face, filled him with a love so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He thought back to the man he was just a few months ago, a man who had everything, but who had no idea what he was truly missing. He was still a millionaire, a titan of industry, but now, he was also a father. He was a man who had been given a second chance, a life he had never known he had, and it was a life he would never, ever trade for all the money in the world. He had found his family in the most unexpected of places, in a diner on a rainy night, and in doing so, he had finally found himself